it took us that long. So, well, you can do the if this turns into something, you can do the we're back stuff after the fact.
Oh, right.
Fuck it, whatever. We can just roll right into this shit.
I'll just come down here in the morning and be
Here
like,
it comes. Do you believe that there was a person named Jesus Christ or Jesus of Nazareth?
No.
You do not believe that person existed?
Do not.
At all?
I believe
from a historical sense, you don't believe that there was someone that was known as Jesus of Nazareth?
Not really. I think it was all
You think the whole thing was made up?
Right.
See, that's where I think that's one spot where you and I differ.
It's possible. I would say it's possible there was a guy walking around claiming certain things.
Yeah, I think Mary and Joseph existed.
Okay.
I think that they were people that existed in 0 AD and or 0 BC, however you want to look at it. And I think that they had a son.
Yeah.
And his name they named him Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't know what his last name was.
Right.
Of Nazareth, middle name of, last name Nazareth.
Yeah.
And I think that person existed. And now, do I think he was a early times evangelist? You know, like a televangelist, just like what we see with Jimmy Swaggart or whatever?
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe he convinced people that he knew the way.
Yeah.
So if he was the beginning of the gospel, or if he was the beginning of the profession of the gospel, the professing of the gospel, then maybe. These are all things that I don't know the answers to, but I think that person existed. I think that he had a following, and I think that he taught his followers good things. I do not think that he was the son of a virgin.
Okay.
I do not think that he actually performed any miracles.
Right.
I do not think that he rose from the dead.
Okay. So if he wasn't performing miracles, do me a favor, like separate those bottles a little bit. They're clinking.
Oh, getting a little tight knit over here.
It's getting on my nerves a little.
Yeah.
Okay. So if he wasn't performing miracles, and born of a virgin and all that, which I don't think he was.
You don't even think he existed.
Right. But if he did exist but wasn't doing all these fantastical things, miraculous things, why would anybody be following him around and telling tales of him?
Got a great answer for that.
Okay.
Well, I'll use the example of Muhammad before I'll go into Jesus, because I can speak a little bit more, believe it or not, about the prophet Muhammad than I can about Jesus. So Muhammad had followers similar to Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah.
And so Muhammad, forget the whole story, and I'm a shithead for not having the whole thing, but basically he went into a cave.
Okay.
And he was on a hunger strike, whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
And he was protesting something. I can't remember all the details of it. But he went into a cave and he was deprived of air, light, food, and oxygen. Air and oxygen, same thing. Air, water, air, and food, and light. And so he basically entombed himself for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And at some point, he claims to have seen an angel. And that angel held open a book that was in his story, the Quran, and held it open and said, recite. And Muhammad was an illiterate person who was not able to read or write, but miraculously he was able to recite from the Quran. And he thought it to be a miracle. Now, so he left the cave. He said he's like, holy shit, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Got to go. I just saw some shit. Goes out and sees everybody that he knows. He's like, dude, you're not going to fucking believe what happened. I'm in this cave, and this fucking angel comes along, and he's like, here, look at this book. Read it, motherfucker. And he reads it, and he's like, it's a miracle, because I can't read, but I could read then. And here's a simple answer to that one.
Okay.
He was hallucinating. He was deprived of air and food and water, and he had been in there for a little too long, and he saw some shit. And he came out, and that's assuming that we really think that Muhammad believed what he was telling people.
Okay.
That if he really believed it, then he was likely hallucinating because of deprivation of oxygen and food. there's also the possibility that he doesn't believe any of it, and he was just completely full of shit, and he was trying to get people to follow him,
Yeah.
which is a likely possibility too. So I don't know that
there's the possibility that there was no Muhammad in a cave.
That's certainly a
and
possibility.
somebody just fabricated a story decades later about a person, and you can't dispute it because nobody knew him or saw him.
Sure. Yeah, we don't know, but I would,
which is kind of where I come from.
But I would say that there's enough historical evidence.
Well, okay. Here's what I would
these
say.
people existed. Now, going back to what I was saying about about Jesus and why people followed him. I don't know that he had the same type of story that Muhammad had. Fuck, they may have been the same person.
Entirely possible. Yep.
But I don't know that he had the same story or the same examples of that. But the point is that he had a good. He was a salesman, I think.
Right.
He was able to convince people that he knew the right way to live.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he was wrong. I think what he was teaching people was not a bad thing. He was teaching people to be just and fair and to be and to be forgiving and to love one another and to just to be a good human, to treat others as you would want to be treated, right?
Right.
So there's I think that those principles, if you were to, and I think it's proven today, that if you stand on a fucking soapbox on a college campus and you tell these and you say these things and you convince people that, look, this is the right way, that you will find followers.
Yeah.
If you're correct, if you're charismatic enough.
We've seen that.
Absolutely. Jimmy Swaggart and who's the guy in Texas with the giant fucking church?
Right. David Koresh.
No, not that guy.
Oh, that other wacko.
No, who's the guy with the big fucking church that...
I don't know. There's so many of them.
Come on. The televangelist. You know who I'm talking
Jimmy
about.
Swaggart? Don't know.
Texas televangelist.
Google knows.
I think he's Joel Osteen.
Oh, okay.
So Joel Osteen...
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't know anything about Joel Osteen. I don't think he's a terrible person, though.
I mean, if you consider... Is manipulating millions of people does that make you terrible? I think so.
He is getting rich, I think.
Right? Same like as Joyce Meyer. They're terrible people.
You think so?
Enriching themselves off the blood and backs of other people
at all?
I mean, are they?
Their
message is that you will get wealth by giving to the church and giving to God. And by the way,
that's her message.
Oh, that's her message. Her whole message is
I don't know that it's Joel Osteen's message.
Well, I don't know about
Joyce Meyer.
Joyce Meyer, for sure.
Well, and there's motherfuckers in the mix, right? I mean, there's the Jimmy Swaggarts and the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, and there's a lot of bad people that are really good examples for why religion is fucked. But there's also good ones too. I think. Yeah. I think. Look,
I think there are people with good hearts who are just wrong about what they believe in, but they have a good. They're not. I'm not saying by any means that all these people
topic of the point that I was trying to make about the history,
or something.
about the Jesus Christ aspect of it, is that there's very few things that. I mean, look. Let's take the Kennedy conspiracy, the Kennedy assassination conspiracy. I'm going to make a stretch
Different
here, right?
Direction
Stick
here,
with me.
Okay.
Stick with me. That happened in 1964. Kennedy was shot, and it's been 56 years now or so, right? Since that happened, and there's been people shooting holes in the whole theory of what happened for 50 of those 56 years, right?
Right.
So the fact that that the story of Jesus of Nazareth and the story of the Prophet Muhammad has persisted for 2,000 plus years, without really anybody destroying it completely. There's still a huge population.
Oh, there's a lot of destroying going on, but
there's more people that believe than that don't believe.
Well, okay. For one,
so you think it's destroyed because you believe that way.
Well,
but there's still a shit ton of people that believe that it's
a document that was written hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, that believe the opposite of what you believe.
Right.
So
sure.
So you can say they're stupid. You can say they're whatever. Right. Yeah.
It hasn't been destroyed, but I kind of think it has. So, okay, for one, many of the stories that are in the Bible that everybody believes as the Word of God were written by people decades later. So the book of Luke, for one, there's the four Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Luke is not real. That's not a real person. That is and biblical scholars would concede that is a sort of a amalgamation of a bunch of stories and characterizations that were put on a person known as Luke. But there is no person named Luke who wrote that book, in the sense that we think there was a person named Matthew that wrote Matthew, right?
Okay.
They're not the same. So 1/4 of the 4 Gospels is not a real person, not a real retelling of a story, for one. And we've seen where there's, again, and I'm no expert by any means, but I have studied this a little bit. We've seen evidence to present that where parts of Mark and John, I believe, were combined to make Luke. So there's certain elements that are directly out of the book of Mark and directly out of the book of John that make up Luke. So you can almost say, okay, well, Luke doesn't matter because it's not another telling of this tale. It's the same telling that this other thing was.
Okay.
But regardless, that was written like 50 years later. And there's evidence to show that all 4 of the Gospels were written like at the earliest 20 years later, and like some of them were 30 or 40 years later. So
Later than what?
Of the time of the stories they're telling, which is the birth and death of Jesus.
So you're saying that they were
Like
written
30 years after Jesus died.
Okay.
So in the same sense of
So
you're saying
100 AD,
and I
or
think
whatever.
Luke was like 50 years later. So in the same sense
Or
of
50 AD, yeah.
Kennedy, now we're telling the story 56 years later of the death of John F. Kennedy, and we still don't know what really happened with cameras and newspapers and reporters and TV.
The point I was
we don't know what the fuck happened.
Well,
Here we're going off of
hearsay.
Right. Decades after the fact in a
Right.
basically
The
prehistoric time.
The point
It's not.
I was making is
Oh,
that
okay.
is that it's taken us 56 years to poke a billion holes into
Yeah.
this. And I think that religion, organized religion,
No, there's a lot
Christianity,
of holes in it.
but how old are those holes? I don't think that those holes existed until the past
I don't.
maybe
I bet they
100
did.
years.
I think there's been a very conscious effort to hide those holes. The church in general has been like, no, we don't want that shit getting out there. You tell me 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, nobody was doubting this stuff. I guarantee you the day it was told, people were doubting. I mean, that's the whole thing.
The percentage
Christianity came up in a time where it was
the
not the
percentage-
widespread
right.
belief.
Right.
That's the whole point. It
The
wasn't.
percentage of Christians, or the percentage of believers, let's put it that way, the percentage of believers 100 years ago as opposed to today was ridiculously larger. I think that there are many more people today that are, maybe they're,
I mean, it grew
back
over
then
time,
they
right?
were
So at one point
closeted,
there were none, and then there were 10, and then there were 100.
what, you mean
and then
non-believers? Like
no, I'm saying
atheists?
believers.
Oh,
there were no Christians before Christ, right? So like,
Wow.
there were believers of God, of the
Maybe.
Old Testament God,
Right.
but that'd be before Christ. You couldn't be a Christian because that's
Okay.
that is what a Christian
And
is.
that's
a
where
believer
there's
of Jesus
Jews.
Christ.
And,
right,
sure.
yeah. But then it was a very small minority of people, and then it grew. Right,
Mm-hmm.
they were persecuted for believing what they believed,
Mhm.
and it continued to grow, which is a big reason why people believe it's true, is because it grew so much that they're like, it has to be true. Look how many people believe it. Excuse me, I brought this up before we were recording. The historian, I want to say, and I'm probably wrong, I think his name is Josephus. A lot of Christians lean on Josephus, the historian, to prove the Bible because he allegedly wasn't a Christian.
Flavius Josephus.
He had no skin in the game, so to speak,
Mhm.
and he allegedly confirmed a lot of these details that are in the Bible. I dispute that, and I think there are a lot of facts that do dispute it, but I'm not. I don't have the facts in front of me to speak to that, so I'm not going to. But I think if you study the ties between Josephus and the Bible, you can poke some holes in it. But I will say, so one particular point. This is one of many that I have in my back pocket that I kind of go to. In the Bible, it talks about when Jesus died on the cross,
Mhm.
the day because he was on the cross for several days before dying.
Mhm.
The day he died, I believe, and I've had a bunch of Coors Light, so bear with me. the skies opened up and there was dark clouds, and it was this huge, like, terrifying scene of whatever, right? Dark clouds and storms and whatever when Jesus died in this symbolic, what just happened? What the fuck just happened? Oh my God, Jesus died. That kind of thing, right? Allegedly.
The Son of God has died.
Right.
Yes.
But there's no stories from people outside of the Bible who maybe don't believe in Christianity, but they were there in the area, maybe working for the government, so local or whatever. There's nothing that says, oh my God, on this day, I don't know what happened, but there was this massive dark cloud that came in and it was so bizarre and nobody understands what happened. And I don't know what was going on 10 miles over there, but right here, there was this massive, there's nothing corroborating that event outside of a biblical story.
We're talking 2,000 years ago,
for sure, and
when there wasn't a whole lot of historical record of anything.
And that's part of my point too, is a lot of these stories that we think we believe are actually told decades later. And we don't know that. They don't tell us that in Sunday school.
One could argue that the writer, the crafters of the gospel were recording these things that they thought relevant, that they thought important.
But there's
nobody.
That's
why we saw. This is the only record that we have.
Right. There's nobody that isn't a quote unquote believer or Christian who corroborates certain events. Right. There's nobody saying, "Oh, yeah, I don't know what was going on."
A fucking book.
But there was this massive cloud front that came in.
But they didn't write a book.
I don't know what was going on.
Why would they have written a book?
The seas of blah, blah, blah split apart.
Why would they have written anything?
Because it was fucking weird. It was some crazy ass shit that they're trying to convince you happened in the Bible.
Yeah, okay.
But the only people retelling that story are Christians, right?
Right.
So like decades later, there's nobody with a written record of the day of or anything like that. It's always people generations removed who are telling these stories of like basically what amounts to a long time ago in a galaxy far in a desert far away. That's basically what it comes down to.
So
so it's like, well, why wouldn't you dispute that? You would never believe it now if somebody said,
"Hey, that's a very good point.
Hey, guess what happened 50 years ago?
Right,
the fucking clouds came in over Dallas when Kennedy was shot."
I'll ask you this:
oh my God,
there was an earthquake.
Whatever.
There was an earthquake about 120 years ago. On the New Madrid Fault in the Missouri area, and the Mississippi River allegedly flowed backwards, flowed from south to north.
Yeah.
Water flowed from the south to the north. Do you believe that occurred?
No.
You don't believe that occurred?
Not really. I mean, I don't.
I mean, that's 100 years ago, and there's people that well, they're dead now probably, but people that in our lifetime we could have asked, "Hey, did this happen?" And they'd be like, "Well, yeah, saw it with my own eyes."
I mean, I believe that like maybe the waters got choppy because the ground was shaking, and anybody that's ever like shook a pool or something, you see the water get choppy. But like we know why water flows a certain direction. There's like gravity and elevation and shit, and you don't just change elevation and gravity during an earthquake.
I don't disagree with you.
So
I just think it's interesting that there's something that's not that long ago where people claim that something miraculous happened, like parting the Red Sea or whatever it may be.
So, forget about all the stories of creation and whales and whatever.
Yeah, Jonah and the whales,
all
a little
that
bit
stuff
of
that you're just like,
a little bit rough to deal with. Here, what's even more, I'm on your side on a lot of these things, so I'm being a bit of a devil's advocate. But the biggest thing for me is that forget Jonah and the whale, forget the ark. I mean, those are all I think they're fantastical stories that are there they're meant to teach a lesson. It's like Aesop's fables. I mean, they're similar. They're there to teach you a lesson. They were good stories put into the Bible because the objective was to make good people. Yeah. That was the objective, which is a noble cause, and I think we should appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And I think also not shit on it, is kind of my approach to it. Like, if that's what you want to do, fair enough.
Is it just there to make good people?
I think so. I think the original purpose, sure. There's some ne'er-do-wells. There's the Joel Osteens and the what's her name? The one local here, Joyce Meyer, and there's
you go back. Catholic Church,
Jim
the
and Tammy
Church,
right?
All that stuff. There's some crusades, death, and I mean, there's horrible shit.
There were things done, very, very bad things done in the name of God. Right? Absolutely. Yep. anyway, getting to what I was going to say. Yes,
Yeah.
That's bad. But the thing that kind of changed my mind, 30 years ago or whatever it was I started to learn about Buddhism
Mm-hmm.
and the Muslims and just other religions. Period. The Jews, and I realized that there are a whole bunch of people that are Buddhist, that are Muslim, that are Hindu, that are whatever, any other pick a religion, Jewish. There are far more of them than there are Christians. Look it up.
Okay.
Think China. think China.
Well, yeah.
Think there's a whole fuck ton of people over there, right? Additionally, there's a whole bunch of people in like Africa and sub-Saharan Africa that have not been evangelized, and they believe in whatever the fuck they believe. They believe in like the gods must be crazy, that a Coke bottle's their god or whatever. So, point is that when it comes to heaven and hell and what's right and what's wrong, and should you go to church? If you don't go to church, are you going to go to hell? Well, there's a whole bunch of people that aren't going to a Christian church on every Sunday. Sure. And they're, if they're called Hindu or they're called Muslim or Buddhist, whatever, they're not. Right. So hell's going to be really fucking crowded with all those people. Furthermore, they believe that because you're a Christian, you're going to whatever their version of hell is. Yeah. So who's right and who's wrong? Right. There's a whole bunch, and honestly, there's more of them than there is of the Christians. Yeah. So what that we call it a revelation or whatever, that the factoid that creeped into my consciousness, what it taught me was like, I don't know shit. There's these people over here, and there's billions of them that think this, and then there's a whole bunch of people over here. There's billions of them that think that. Yeah. And everybody thinks they're going to heaven. Nobody thinks they're going to hell. Sure. Someone's got to be wrong. Period. Yep. Someone has to be wrong.
In that context of like they think they're right, which inherently means everyone else is wrong.
Right.
In their eyes. Yeah.
It's not a dichotomy, but it's close to a dichotomy, right? So it's like, someone has to be wrong, which means, boy, that's a terrible situation. Yeah. And that I don't think if people
or they're all wrong.
Maybe,
and no one's going to hell.
Maybe the Jews are right. Who knows? The Jews might be the closest to right. Honestly,
I have said before, if you put my feet to the fire, I'd be more likely to believe in the Jewish religion than the Christian religion. Yeah. But that's
so. Yeah, but that's kind of the idea. Is like, who knows? If you had to put your thumb on one, whatever. Who cares? But it should open your eyes, at least for me. It opened my eyes. I won't say it should open everybody's eyes. Yeah. I hate to be that way, but it opened my eyes to think about the billions of people around the world that have believed otherwise. And it's awful. It's like saying there's no way in hell, there's no way in the world or in the universe that there's other intelligent life out there. Well, that's awful arrogant of us to think that there's not other intelligent life out there somewhere in the universe. Right. Yeah. There's a lot of things that would say it's probably likely. We can't prove it or disprove it. It's awful. It's also very arrogant of me to say I'm right and these billions of other Muslims or Hindus or whatever are wrong.
I feel like
that's awful.
It's less awful arrogant though. Because you are using educated information as
so
opposed
are they,
to,
though, man. So are they.
They're using faith. They're using
in some cases
fairy tales. Look, they're reading from a book that makes no sense.
There are biblical scholars. Forget the Bible. For just talking about organized religion as a whole.
I'm saying all of them are reading from something.
Well, sure, but they've all got their basis of faith. Yeah, and so and they consider that. In their mind, and I think rightfully so, they consider that their education, and they're considering that fact. They trust that base of knowledge.
But don't you think that? I'll ask. Do you think that as we learn more and more about our world and our scientific discovery, that it discounts more and more what they believe? Like I get it. 2,000 years ago, it was easy to believe this shit because we didn't know what the fuck gravity was. We didn't know what physics was and chemistry and shit. We didn't know what that shit was.
You have to make a choice.
This shit made sense.
Right, sure. You have to make a choice as to what makes sense for you. And I think that for some of us, we can easily discount a lot of things, right? I mean, I hate it's difficult to use a real world case. Yeah. A man landing on the moon. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that man landed on the moon?
I do.
Okay. But there's a lot of people out there that would say
you're right.
that's been debunked. There's all kinds of evidence that says that we did not land on the moon. There's also people out there that say that the earth is flat.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree.
Right.
They're wackadoos, but they say that they have a book of evidence that says that they're right.
Right.
So
but I would say I have a book that says there's a guy who swings around Brooklyn from webs and he can stick to walls. But it's written down in a book. Yeah. There's even depictions of him.
Sure, yeah, there's pictures.
I mean,
that
proves it's true.
Would you believe? Do you believe that Babe Ruth called a shot?
I mean, I believe it in the sense that it's relatively modern, and there's people that claimed to have seen it,
but it's not.
But really, I mean, I didn't see it.
I've heard that there's actually video evidence of it. Some very grainy, shitty video evidence of it.
And I also believe it's
almost more. It's almost possible, more like him doing a Ichiro type of a bat. But they say he called a shot.
Possible. I mean, if you're a home run hitter, you could.
The point is that there was tales of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and where they hit these just gigantic home runs. They were 600 feet.
Right.
They were just unhuman feats, and we believe them.
I mean, I also believe it's entirely possible that it's not true. I wouldn't ever be like, no, and fuck you for even thinking that it's not true. Like,
it's also
it might not be true.
Wouldn't it be nice just to say, fuck it, why not?
So
I'm just gonna trust. I'm gonna trust it.
It's kind of like the whole Trump thing. Like, wouldn't it be nice to just be like, fuck it? Can we just get a Democrat in the office and be done with it?
Yeah, fuck it.
Okay, you
just
and
tired of the bullshit.
We talked about this the other day, and we won't go too much longer. And this is a whole other conversation we can have.
So instead of calling half loaded, we can call this like Sunday school.
Yeah, right. We can call this. Study. Are they still listening?
Get a load of this Bible study.
Yeah. So I've talked to somebody the other day about the notion of just trying to discover truth, whether it's this religion or that religion or whatever. Like, what is the truth? And there are a lot of people that believe, and I'm not saying that I do, but I think it's interesting, that all of these religions share something in common or several things. But a lot of the details that we think separate all of these different religions and make one of them right and everyone else wrong or whatever is bullshit that was added in later by political entities or churches or whatever that tried to control people. Yeah. But it's the truth behind all of them about our origins, our creators, how we got here, that they all share in common, right? And so if you can get past all this religion, you can try to find the truth that is there in Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism and Judaism and whatever, right? We keep going to those 5, but that there is something shared in all of them that if you ignore all the bullshit, you'll see, oh, this is what it really is. And that potentially what that really is
paganism.
Well, that there's some kind of energy that is controlled by a being of some sort, a god, so to speak. Okay. It's not necessarily a man or a guy with a beard in heaven, right? It's just some entity that is involved in creating this universe that we all live in, and that we can all tap into that somehow, that energy, so to speak. And it could be in the form of healing. It could be in the form of perception, of seeing other planes of existence, right? Realities that we all talk about. I'm just saying, this is what some people believe, and that maybe that is the truth. That this whole, what is heaven, what is hell? Well, there is no heaven and hell.
What you were talking about with the whole yogi thing, like, right?
Yoga.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
well, yogis or
Was I talking about that?
well, I think maybe your wife was. I mean,
Okay.
it was the last time we were at the bar.
She's currently doing yoga.
But like the whole third eye.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, that's part of what we were
enlightenment.
talking about. Right. And that maybe that there is this other plane of existence of energy that formed the universe that we live in, and that we just don't see it the way we should.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's also like, okay, but then there's a guy walking on water, turning water into wine. Like, is that fucking crazy compared to energy that formed us and allows us to heal? Like, they're both crazy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as much as I'm like, yeah, that's weird, I'm like, well, why not? I'm not saying I believe it, but what makes more sense? That there's a dozen or dozens of different religions, only one of which is right, but they all kind of share
Right.
similarities, or
I think
they're all kind of right because they're all based on this realm that we still don't quite understand.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the simplest answer is usually the right answer, right?
Throwing it out there.
The Occam's razor thing, which from Contact, we should never take our life lessons from Hollywood, but Occam's razor was the first time I ever heard of it was in the movie Contact.
Yeah.
And it means that the simplest answer is usually the right answer.
Okay. I would agree with
and
that.
I think that that's what I apply to life in the world around us is that it's not that complicated. There may be, I can't take these leaps of faith.
Yeah.
So maybe there's other universes out there. There's other beings that are controlling us potentially. There's other creatures out there in the universe. But I honestly think that no, they're living their own life. They're out there in their little corner of the cosmos, and they're doing their own thing, and they don't give two shits about us.
How do you feel about?
And we should feel the same way, and that we are just simple beings on this little blue ball floating around, and we should just appreciate what we have. And you know what? Not overcomplicate it. The simplest answer is probably the right one. We're here. I don't know how we got here. We are basic microorganisms. Honestly, some creature thousands of years from now may look at us like we look at a microorganism from the prehistoric age. Like, oh, look at these simple organisms. They were so fucking stupid.
What do you?
They almost ruined the planet. There were so many of them.
Yeah. What do you say to people who say things like, the world is so complex, or even like a leaf that has veins going through it and chloroform and this entire chemical process going on with sunlight and oxygen and all that stuff. Like, the only way that can be what it is through an intelligent creator, intelligent design, so to speak. That's
say to them?
What do you think of that concept? That can only be explained.
Well, I disagree.
The world is so complex.
I disagree.
Okay.
And what they would say then is like, well, how else would you explain it? And I'm like, well, I don't have to. I mean, I can explain it with the science behind it, that the sun creates a chemical reaction with the chlorophyll, and there's simple scientific explanation. If someone's looking beyond that, and they but why?
Yeah.
But why did that? How? It's a beautiful chemical reaction.
Right.
Someone had to have designed that. Well, I don't think beyond that. I don't need to think beyond that. I don't need to explain the why. If someone wants the why, then fine. Go get that. If that's what makes you sleep at night. But I don't need that to make me to fulfill me.
Yeah.
I can get through life. I think. Well, we'll see. With just the simple, like, oh, okay, that makes sense. We've all lost, not we've all, but many people have lost a pet or lost a loved one. Mm-hmm. But let's use pets just because it's a little easier to deal with. But if you lost a pet, I have 2 pets that are currently in my house that are in boxes, and they are a box of ashes. Now, why do I keep these things? Why do I have these things? Because I haven't found an urn yet for them, and I will someday find an urn for both of them, 2 urns, one for each, and I'll put them on a mantle or something like that. Now, why? That's fucking silly. But I don't That's what's making just the memory of them. I need some symbolic thing that makes me remember the impact that they had on my
their
life.
Spirit exists right there, and you want to keep
I don't need that. But
you.
some people do,
Yeah.
and that's fine. If that's what makes you sleep better at night, fine. Are they hurting you believing that? No, they're not hurting you. They're not hurting me either. So fuck them. If they want to believe that there's an invisible man in the sky that's imposing doom on them if they don't show up to church on Sunday, that's your fucking prerogative.
They're hurting me when things.
They're not hurting you at all,
No,
homie.
they are.
No, they're not.
When there's political shit that goes on based on
That's
religion,
not
and there's a
hurting you.
lot of it, or there's assholes blowing up abortion clinics because they don't believe that God thinks that's okay or whatever, that's
Yeah.
hurting, quote, me, right?
Well,
I'm saying, yeah, it seems like no big deal when it's just people living their own life. But people don't live their own lives.
To fix that. You are not going to fix crazy.
You're right.
Period.
True.
So you have to choose your battles.
But when you give them something to be crazy about and you push it as an agenda,
it's there. You're not going to be able to take it away. You're not going to change everybody's mind. You're not going to reform Christianity. You're not going to convince the billions of people across the globe that believe in a higher power. You're not going to be able to do it. There's just no way in hell.
One person at a time.
Now, so what you can do is you can just say, look, this is how I believe, and I'm not going to, take the Hippocratic
I'm not
oath.
on a crusade.
Well, sure, but take
kind
the
of am.
Hippocratic oath that first, do no harm. Do no harm to anybody else. Forget what they may believe. I'm not here to harm you. I'm not here to chastise you. I'm not here to berate or to diminish your beliefs. I'm going to accept you for whoever you are and for whatever you might believe. If you believe that there's a higher power, then good for you.
That sounds great until your religion says you're not allowed to be married because you didn't marry the right thing.
Then fuck them. You don't need to be around them.
Except that's our fucking national policy until recently.
There's a reason why the policy's changed, because the majority of Americans are like, yeah, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, but what if everybody was like saying the other side of like,
that's why we evolve.
Whatever you think is okay, man. That's fine.
That's why
except
we evolve.
when what you think controls our entire
So if I was around
lifestyle,
a bunch of people that said, well, but here, let's make believe for a second. Let's pretend that I'm a homosexual man and I want to get married to my boyfriend. Okay, and everybody around me, all of the people that I love and that I've been around my entire life, they all are devout Christians, and they firmly believe that I'm sinning by being homosexual. Well, and this is the problem. I think it's better today that it's not perfect, but it's better today. Is that in 1980, many people had to say goodbye to their family and their loved ones because they couldn't come to grips with it. And they said, well, if you don't appreciate how I feel, then I have to cut you out of my life. And that's a shame. But that's, unfortunately, the reality still today, that if you believe one thing and the people around you that you think you love and love you, and they can't accept you for who you are and what you believe, then you need to probably avoid them. And that it goes both ways. Yeah. So if there's Christians out there that be like, oh, I can't hang out with Jarod because he just doesn't appreciate who I am, I have to cut Jarod out of my life, then they need to make that choice. But that would hurt you, possibly.
Okay.
Because there's people that you love that are Christians.
I'm certain there are people who've cut me out because of this.
Well, but that's a shame, isn't it? Don't you wish they hadn't?
Right. Yeah. I mean, sure.
So you would hope that
I'm pretty antisocial, but
but I think the better approach would be to take the better approach to take would be to say, like, you know what, I accept you for what you believe. I don't agree with you, and that's fine.
I completely agree that would be the better approach.
We don't have to
think
agree.
That's what the approach generally is.
From you, I don't think it is.
From a lot of people, a lot of Christians are like,
I think there's a lot of Christians
not only
that
do we differ. It's our job in the eyes of God to change your mind, or to not only to at least stop you from encouraging other people to be atheist or gay or whatever, right? Like that's our task now, is to shut that down.
Right.
Like
people who are evangelizing are not necessarily the best. I mean, not at all the best. I think that anybody that's out there trying to turn everybody, I don't necessarily want to be around those people.
We both agree that.
Yeah. I went by, we talked about Ronnie's Theater, right? Going to the movies right across from Ronnie's. It's a church. I don't know what the church is called now, but it used to be Concord Baptist Church, and it's a fairly big church. There's one right next door to it that's a Presbyterian church.
I think I know what you're talking about.
So there's two churches right next door to each other. There's a froyo to to the south of them. And
Used to be a Quiznos.
there was a Quiznos. Yeah,
So
yeah,
good.
yeah. So there's Concord Baptist Church and there's some Presbyterian church. It's not Concord anymore. It's called something else. But anyway, Oliver and I stopped and we got a froyo.
Yeah.
He got a froyo. I did not because I'm watching my weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I was like, we're sitting there in the truck. He's eating his ice cream. I said, that was my church growing up. And he goes, really? And he goes, why don't you go to church anymore? So him and I have not really talked about religion. And I said, you know, buddy, I think that I was probably pushed a little too hard when I was a kid by my grandmother to go to church every Sunday and do this and do that, do that. And when I was given the opportunity to not do that, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think it's also a bit of laziness. And that was my approach to it. And that's not dishonest, I don't think. I don't need to get into what I believe or don't believe.
You don't.
No,
You don't think you need to get into that?
I don't want to. I've taken the same approach with all of my kids that I do not want to sway their belief one way or the other. I let them make their own decisions.
Yeah.
They and TJ definitely came up with his own summation of things without my input. Chuck is, I believe, Chuck's a Christian. He's a believer, and I applaud him for that. Good for you. I have no problem with that. If that's why I want them to make their own decision.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel comfortable with? What helps you get by? What makes sense to you? What makes the most sense to you in your life?
I appreciate that. What if Chuck, what made him get by and made sense to him was to protest and yell with signs in front of some restaurant that serves gay people?
Yeah. Well, then
And
I would have
he-
a conversation about ethics and about what being a good person
But that's what
is.
makes him get by and feel good about Christianity.
But that's not
that's
not
the-
faith and religion, though, Jared.
Well,
You're conflating.
But I'm saying
you're
it's
conflating
this
things.
sort of double standard of like, it's okay.
No, you're taking the extreme. You're taking.
Welcome to reality, Ryan.
But you're
That's
taking,
that's the life we live.
That is the outliers. We've been over this 1,000 times on this. There's outliers, and there's the extremes.
I
And
don't think they're that much outliers.
No,
I think
they
it's
are.
more
The people who are protesting on both sides of it. The people who are protesting abortion clinics, and the people who are protesting, what is the other side of that? The God hates fags people out of Kansas.
Guess, yeah, whatever.
I mean, so though they're both morally reprehensible people.
Right.
Period. They are the outliers. They are the way outside the norm.
But here's the thing:
the majority of people that are religious feel like they're doing the right
has
things.
protested at an abortion clinic before. Now, is she burning the place down? Is she saying God hates fags? No.
Is she peacefully
But
protesting?
I guess.
I mean, she's not.
But she's holding a sign at an abortion clinic.
Okay.
Now, what? And you say, okay, fine. But what if she just made some young woman feel like shit? What if that girl is like emotionally scarred because she doesn't know what to think because my mom is standing out front with a fucking sign that says God hates abortion or whatever, right?
Well,
and like now you're saying, hey, you believe whatever you want to believe.
I
That's
give your mother
peaceful abortion or a peaceful
credit
protest.
in the world for exercising her First Amendment rights.
Right.
I think that she should. I think that as long as you're doing it peacefully and you're not harming anybody. She's not harming anybody.
I'm not talking grenades and bombs. I'm talking emotional harm that you can inflict on people by being a dick, basically. By just
toughen up.
Well, I'm just saying.
Toughen up.
If you can say.
So you're also, we're getting into a whole other topic here, but you're also, you're going into, so
yep.
You're going into a building to kill a human being. So.
Well, okay.
That's my opinion on what that.
Right.
So I agree with your mother. I don't think that I would stand out. I wouldn't go so far as to stand out in front of a building and hold up a sign.
Right.
But I think that it's not a bad thing. I think that maybe that person should think twice about what they're about to go do or what they just did. And that's it's a really fucking tough situation to be in to have those thoughts. It's terrible. It's a terrible thought process.
But I'm just saying that's an example of someone who. Any other time, you would not look at that person and be like, oh my God, they're an extremist. They don't count in this conversation that we're having. But they're not. That is a normal person that we all know who goes to fucking give their opinion on something
I would
that can harm somebody else.
I think standing in front of an abortion clinic or whatever,
or a church or
whatever,
or a gay bar or whatever, right? Like
gay bars a little tougher, but I think look, if you're standing in front of a gay bar holding up a sign saying that that's your First Amendment right in this country, I wouldn't agree with that message,
right.
But I would be like, hey, can't do anything about it as long as they're not hurting anybody. They're just peacefully protesting.
But I'm saying maybe they are hurting people. Maybe they're not blowing the place up. They're not shooting anybody, but they're hurting people.
Well, but then we get into a whole different conversation about what is harm.
Right. Well,
what is harm?
That's
emotional harm.
That's a real thing. I mean, I'm not saying that I dwell on the emotional feelings of everybody.
Well, if we get into that, and the emotional the feelings, if we get into now, we're into fucking deep liberal state here, right? So now we have to worry about everything that everybody says. What harm does it have? If I use the word, I'll give you an example: retarded. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a bad word in today's world, and I think maybe rightfully so. It's a bad word. Okay. I think that there's 50 years ago, there was a good way to use retarded.
Right.
The street was retarded from the heat because it buckled under the pressure of the heat. Whatever. Yeah. There's words that have appropriate use and that they've been bastardized.
It has been. I agree. That term meant something that was clean at one point, and now it's a dirty. word.
So that word can cause harm.
Yeah.
Emotional harm. It can be offensive to people.
Mm-hmm.
So should we just eliminate that word from our vocabulary altogether? So there's a lot of people, I would say probably a large percentage, like 80+% of Americans would say like, yep, get rid of that word altogether. We should not use that word at all. There's not a use at all for that word, but we're going to get rid of it because it causes emotional harm. Yep. Or we could say like, look, just don't let it bother you, which is what used to be the answer to most things.
Yeah.
In the pre-1980, the answer was like, yeah, just water off a duck's back. Just don't let it bother you. And that was the answer. Mm-hmm. Now the answer is, no, you must never say that again because it hurts four people's feelings. Now, retarded is not the case.
Right.
But I'm saying other words that have harm, that could potentially cause harm to four people or to one person or to 4 million people. It doesn't matter. Where do we draw the line?
Well, I'm saying
now there goes your First Amendment rights. There they go. They're out the fucking window. So you want to say that your mom can't stand in front of an abortion clinic and hold up a sign? Bullshit. She should absolutely be able to do that.
She should be able to.
The God hates fag people should also
do it.
No, in your opinion.
Well, okay, that's what I'm saying. If you're going to say that, kind of to each their own, and everybody can if they're not harming you, well, okay, now we have to define harm, but you can believe whatever you want to believe.
When I say harm, I mean physically harm.
Well, okay, but I'm saying there's a lot of harm that isn't.
I'm not saying emotional.
Somebody in the face
I'm not saying emotional harm. No, I think that in those cases, you should.
But I'm saying when
you should learn how to deal with it.
It's easy. It's really easy to go. Sure, you want to be a Christian? Fine, that's not hurting anybody. You don't believe what I believe. I don't believe what you believe. It's all good. We're all going to shop at the same grocery store and whatever. It's fine. Mm-hmm. And if that's all it was, then that'd be great. We could all live together, and you'd never even know. For the most part,
that is all it is.
But unfortunately, it's like, okay, take it a little bit further. Well, now I go to church. Oh, well, what do you believe at your church? Oh, well, what do they believe at the church next door? Well, maybe they're a little more extreme.
How many
but they're
times
still
do you
normal.
encounter...
I still go to my baseball practice with their kids' parents.
How many times do you encounter Christian extremists?
I mean, define extremist. I would say a lot of them are fucking extreme.
Okay, so how do you define an extremist? Someone that believes what? That you'll go to hell if you
It's all extreme in my
sugar?
book, but okay. I mean, extreme, if you want to say, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think it's all extreme. But
that's a problem in its own right.
I would say where there are people like, and I hope this doesn't sound bad, and I'm sure she's probably going to listen to this. I think, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'm putting words in her mouth. Your sister, I think believes that whatever you believe is okay with you. Whatever you think gets you into heaven is fine. Whatever I think gets you into heaven is fine. It may be different, and we're both going to get into heaven that way. Okay. That would be like the opposite of extreme. That's like the most casual Christian you could be. Like,
I think that you have properly assessed For the most
So
part,
like very
my
few
sister,
rules
yes.
and restrictions, and like, hey, whatever, man, this kind of works for you and that works for me, and
Yeah,
go.
to each their own, I
Kind
think
of.
is the approach.
But
like,
almost that like they both work. Like,
well, not that they both work, but you do you, I'll do me.
Okay.
I think this is right. If you think that's right, good luck.
Right.
That I think that is probably more
Maybe.
the approach. I don't
Okay.
know though.
so the extreme would be like somebody that, let's just say, let's say a typical Baptist churchgoer
Mhm.
believes that you must repent for your sins, believe in Jesus Christ, take him into your heart, and that is the only way into heaven.
Okay.
Anything outside of that, you don't get in. You can say, I believe in God, but I didn't really like get saved and ask Jesus into my heart. Sorry,
I was
you're
raised
not getting
the way
in.
that you just described.
Yeah.
I mean, I was baptized. I was
And then
taught all those things.
You go a little
yes.
further with that doctrine, and it's like, okay, homosexuality is a sin, and not only is it a sin, but you're going to go to hell for doing it, especially if you don't stop doing it in the eyes of God and you didn't repent, and other things, not just homosexuality, abortion and adultery and theft and whatever. Right? These are all sins that if you don't seek redemption for and ask for forgiveness, like there's a real gray area there as to whether or not you'll still get into heaven. Like if you're an active sinner, but you're like, yeah, but I believe in God, but it's fine. I'm still doing drugs and like cheating on my wife and whatever. Basically Catholicism. You're going to hell, right? So like that would be, I would say, a form of extremism. Now, are they blowing up abortion clinics? Not necessarily, maybe. But
when's the last time abortion was blown up?
I feel like it was the 80s, early 90s.
It's been a minute.
But it's still a thing. It's still a thing that we talk about.
All right.
Now we blow up mosques, right? That's the new mosques are the new abortion clinic.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm saying that would be extreme. But I mean, some people would be like, that's not extreme. That's what I believe. And I go to church every day and we talk about
blowing up
not
shit?
being gay and not being abortion and not being a thief.
So what about so I think that a lot of churches today are, what do they call it? Open affirmation, open and affirming churches where they will take, well, not necessarily that's non-dominational, but meaning that they don't care if you're homosexual. Right. They don't care if you, they don't care anything about you. I mean, what you can do whatever we will take you as long as you believe in God.
Right.
Period. You just believe in God.
Yeah. Now I would argue.
Maybe it is not denominational.
I would say, like, if you had to say, well, what denomination believes that?
What I'm talking about is let's say Hope Church,
right,
is the prime example that I can think of that falls into that category. And
right.
I mean,
and I would say good for them if they aren't excluding people based on a certain belief. As long as you believe that there's a God and you love that person and try to do good, good for that church for not casting you out, if you're gay and you had an abortion. So if you're a lesbian that had an abortion and you can go to that church and be welcomed, good. I think there's
a lot of those people out there.
I don't know.
I think there is.
Okay.
I mean,
maybe.
I'm fairly confident
maybe
of it.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
would say most of those people are more Catholic. They're like, well, I don't really want to live by the rules.
So. I think that they're going to churches like
heaven.
I think they're going to churches like Hope, and they're going to these more non-denominational, open and affirming churches. And I think that they are the LGBTQ community. I don't know about whether or not they've had an abortion or not. I think maybe that's not relevant, but or maybe it is. Who knows? But I think that they. I don't think that they're Catholic at all. I think Catholics are very strict. And they don't.
I think they have strict
rules
routines
to follow,
but they don't have there's a lot of stuff you can get away with if
you just don't talk about it.
Just give 7 Hail Marys and 3 of these, and you're good to go.
Don't speak of it.
Yeah, or whatever. Right?
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know. I think this is an interesting conversation.
And it went way longer than we thought it would.
I think that I would love to have other people weigh in on this.
Yeah,
not Rick. Not my sister, because we know where she stands. And we know where Rick stands. I think.
I would like to have Rick weigh on it, but
I don't know who else we would have on it. But
I think ultimately it comes down to there's all this like specifics, right? Do you believe that this is wrong? Do you believe that that's wrong? Do you believe that this happened or that happened, right? And I think you can shoot down a lot of the biblical stuff. Or I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine you can shoot down a lot of the stuff in the Quran, right? Or whatever, right?
Maybe, yeah.
So other religions, I'm not just picking on Christianity here. So then it's like, okay, if you just forget all that stuff, the details, do you believe that a God created this universe? And then you get into like the details, the specifics of like Jesus, he sent his son here, he was born from a virgin and all that stuff. It's like, wait. No, none of that makes any sense. But maybe there's this creator out there who invented all this stuff and we're just living in his world.
Yeah.
Maybe. But like, why? Why would you think that that's true?
Why not?
Because it doesn't make any sense.
But does it have to make sense? Does
Kind
the
of.
fact that we
Kind
just
of.
exist and we've created out of a big bang or just out of dust,
Right.
does that make sense to you?
Right. So where I would say, and I meant to say this a long time ago, and we're going to wrap this up real soon.
Sure, we are.
Now that I can make my point and then hit the stop button.
Uh-huh.
So I said earlier, the complexity of things, like a leaf. Look how complex a leaf is.
Mhm.
The only thing that makes sense is that an intelligent creator designed that. I would argue the opposite. In this world that we seemingly know physics and chemistry and biology and science, right? That this is how certain things behave and act and react. If there was something alive that didn't have a cellular structure or vascular structure, didn't have oxygen supplying through blood or whatever, but still was able to be alive and talk and communicate and whatever, that would be a miracle. If you had all this other shit that when you cut this off, it dies. When you stop the flow of blood and oxygen to the brain, it dies. But this thing doesn't die. This thing stays alive even though it has no oxygen, no blood,
Jellyfish.
no brain, right?
Jellyfish.
I mean, I feel like we know how jellyfish work.
I don't know.
But yeah, if there was just this thing hovering in the middle of the air, it didn't have feet, it could sort of fly and hover there. It didn't
Sounds
have
like
any
a jellyfish.
right? A jellyfish. If only jellyfish existed, that would disprove God.
They do.
So there's no God. So like that to me would be like, oh wow, I don't know how that thing is alive and conscious. I don't know how that thing is doing its thing, but it is. That's a miracle. I would be way more likely to believe in a creator, an all-powerful God that can do anything, if there was this completely impossible thing that exists right there. We can't explain it given all of our understanding of the world, but that thing doesn't exist. Yes, there's outer space. There's the universe that's so far away we can't get to it yet to quite
How many
understand
times have you had this conversation with a Christian? Other than Rick?
Several, many, I don't know.
I mean,
Not like every day, but
I don't
enough.
So I haven't. I had it enough.
Yeah.
I don't think. I have friends that I've had the conversation with in the past, and in every case, challenged and just a mutual respect. Like, fair enough. Which I think is the right approach to the end of this conversation with anybody who believes otherwise. Is that fair enough? That's the proper approach. I think the proper conclusion. But I feel like there's never enough conversations. There's never because I this is you're gonna reject this statement. But there's a guy named Dave Glover. It's on 97.1 FM, and I believe he is currently an atheist. I'm not sure, but he has gone back and forth. And he was an atheist, and he was convinced that no, I believe again, and he's gone back and forth. So his faith has been questioned multiple times. He might be a Christian again. I don't know. Tough call. Doesn't matter. But I remember listening to him several years ago and talking about how his faith was challenged, or his lack of faith was challenged. Yeah. And it was based on the Shroud of Turin, that he saw this evidence. He saw a documentary, and he talked to someone. They were like, "Oh yeah, this is pretty legit. This is this is kind of crazy how legit it is." And it made him think oh shit, And so he did more research, and he's a studied person. He's a learned man, and he read more, and he's like, yeah, I think think I'm going back the other way. I think I'm a believer again. And he did. Now, I don't know if he's gone back the other completely the other way or not.
Right.
But I guess my point is that I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for someone to convince me. I'm open to that conversation. Okay. Not to say that I want to be convinced. Right. I don't really care. But I think that there's comfort in faith. I think that there's a lot of it'll take a lot of weight off your shoulders if you had faith.
Yeah.
In a higher power, in an afterlife. I think that there's a lot of benefit that can come from it, and I would welcome that because it's a lot easier to cope with life and death with faith. So I keep waiting for that. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think there's anything that's going to convince me otherwise, but I welcome that conversation. Yeah. So my getting back to my point is I don't think you can ever have enough conversations about this topic. Yeah. I think that it's a healthy thing as long as you're respectful of the other person and their beliefs. That's the I think the key element is that you have to be open. You have to you have to be able to listen to what they have to say and say, fair enough.
Well, I agree with you. Along the same lines, I think there isn't enough conversation about this. Where I feel like I differ from what I perceive of your opinion is I don't think that it, as much as I'm not out there crusading trying to change everybody's opinion. I don't do that. But if it comes up, I'll absolutely have a conversation with somebody about all of this. And I'm not going to back down from what I think or whatever. But where I don't quite believe in the concept of like to each his own. Because I believe in a truth, and I think it's important to get everybody on the same page of truth. Like, because I think there's a right way of the truth of reality, and there's a wrong belief in the truth of reality. And I for whatever reason, I think it's important, not like epically important, but like I think it's better to be all of us in agreement on truth than disagreeing and going our own way. I think that's dangerous, and it leads to other worse things. If I believed that we could all just like do our own thing but live together cohesively and just like be cool with it, then fine. I absolutely
You don't think
care.
We can?
I absolutely don't think we can. We prove it every day that we cannot live together in this world that way. No.
Bullshit.
What?
How long has this world existed with all these people on it with vastly different opinions about how we exist and how we die and how we live and what we believe?
A few hundred years, maybe 1,000 years, and in that time,
how long has humanity been on this planet?
Longer than that, but how long have they had vastly different opinions?
Well, forever.
Not that long.
Forever.
Religion hasn't been around that long.
Fuck religion. There was one caveman that said, like, how the fuck did I get here? And he had in his mind, like, well, I must have been shit out of the sky. And another fucking caveman is like, nope.
Yeah.
My father told me.
And then they fought and died over whatever.
And my mother gave birth to me. And he's like, and he was more woke than the fucking last guy.
And so they fought and killed each other over shit.
But you know what? They probably never even coexisted. They never even had the conversation. They just said, fuck it. Yeah, what? Okay, great. Good for
millions
you.
And millions of people have died over difference of opinions.
Sure.
And
religion
beliefs.
is
not just religion.
Is a huge cause of conflict. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't. I don't think it has a whole lot to do with God or Christianity. Or I think we would have found something else. And the other thing is that so what.
I mean, we've had
what
people
what you're saying is
killing over who's the better race, who's
I agree.
dirty,
it's terrible,
who's in control of money,
and
things like that.
Hitler wasn't
fucking
necessarily it wasn't a Christian cause. It was more just a genocidal maniac. But what you're professing, which is allow me to paraphrase. Tell me if I'm wrong. What you're professing is that we all must agree, otherwise we will have continued strife across the world. We all must come to agreement, otherwise there will continue to be conflict.
I'm contemplating. Hold on.
That's how I took what you said.
I mean, I'm not saying that people can't get along without completely agreeing on things, but I'm saying when you have fundamental disagreements on your basic belief system, it inevitably causes strife, and we prove it all the time across the world.
So your statement that, again, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that we all must agree, otherwise continued conflict will occur. We will never be able to avoid conflict. I'm going to just
go out on a limb and say yes. Okay. That's what I think.
I think that is the root cause of the conflict.
Why?
Statements like that. The appropriate statement. Maybe not the appropriate, but the better, the more preferred statement, I think, would be to live and let live. And that if you believe that, great. Leave me the fuck alone.
I do believe that, but I don't believe that it can happen.
No,
because we prove all the time that it can't.
You're proving that it can't because you're saying that I
wish
to convince everybody else.
No, look, I'm saying, well, okay, that's the reason I want to get everybody on the same page of truth is because I see repeatedly over and over again every day where people who aren't on the same page hate each other.
Why don't you set the example of I'm going to live and let live?
People do, and it doesn't matter.
Well, but if you set the example and the next person sets the example of like, look, I'm comfortable in what I believe in.
Yeah.
And you can believe in whatever you believe in. And I don't care either way. Whatever makes you comfortable. I think that's the message. I think, if we were evangelizing anything here, that I would say that the message is to live and let live, to quote Paul McCartney in Wings, Just live and let die, I think. But
close enough.
Again, paraphrasing Paul McCartney, but I think just to let everybody be, and as long as but then you also can't be a fucking wacko. Right. You can't be Hitler. You can't be the person who thinks that, well, anybody that doesn't believe me must die. Those are bad people. But as long as you believe that, you know what, I don't necessarily buy into everything you're saying. I'm not picking up what you're putting down, but you're not hurting me. You know what? I don't believe in everything that, let's say, the Boy Scouts are doing lately. Number one, they're going bankrupt. But
I just heard that. Yeah.
But the Boy Scouts have made some decisions to allow girls, and there's already a Girl Scouts. We've had this conversation on the podcast before. But you know what? They're not really hurting anybody. They're helping people. If these little girls feel better because they're a Boy Scout, fuck it. Who gives a shit? If the boys are okay with it, then I don't give a shit.
Right.
I don't have any problem with it. Just keep fucking selling popcorn. The girls keep selling cookies. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, I agree with that. Ideally, that would be great. Except now we've got the fucking Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are suing each other because they let in this group and we let in this group, and how dare this, and we're going to change our name to that. Like,
there's no way,
proving over and over again.
There's no way that we will make a world devoid of conflict. There is no way that will ever happen in any world.
I'm just saying,
in any existence.
If you can start with people not believing in God, that's a good start.
I disagree.
Because that religion, Christianity specifically, but God generally in the Old Testament, and then open it up to all the other religions. But Christianity specifically is the root cause of a lot of strife politically, economically, socially.
There's a lot of wars that have been waged over religion and Christianity in general. But I don't think but saying everybody must not believe in God and that will solve our problems, that is not the answer. That's not the answer.
I think it is the answer.
Yeah, well,
because I'm just saying, like, I fundamentally think it's false. It's not true, and there's a bunch of people that believe it is true, and that difference in belief is a huge problem.
What about the people that believe it's true?
Yeah,
and it just helps them sleep at night.
I mean, that's
what's wrong with them?
That's great. There's nothing wrong with them.
So, but why do you want to?
That's not representative of what causes all the problems in this world.
But again, we've covered this already. We're getting in circles here.
I know,
but what causes all the problems in the world are the outliers.
I don't think it's outliers. You keep calling it outliers, yet it affects the entire world.
There are how many?
So many.
I don't
ways.
know how many people are in the world. How many of those are Christians, or Buddhists, or Muslims, or whatever, or Hindu, and how many of those people are peaceful, happy people? And then I bet you can count easily the people who want to do ill.
I'm not talking about...
And those are the outliers.
You're right. I'm not talking about violence and this guy blew up this train or whatever over religion. I'm talking about political policy that affects everyone. And people vote these people into office based on their Christian beliefs.
Well,
and now we've got fucking policy being decided upon because of religion. Are you fucking
what Christian
kidding me?
Policy do you disagree with?
Lots.
Religion? I mean, not religion. Abortion?
I disagree with that. I disagree.
So you're pro-choice.
I'm pro-choice. I think persecuting homosexuality is wrong.
Okay.
Which we're kind of making strides in. They're changing laws on marriage.
Sure.
That's wrong.
I agree on both counts. Not on both counts. I mean, I don't want to say I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-choice to a degree. I think that there's situations where it makes sense.
Marriage in general, of like this obligation of like, and making laws, tax breaks based on marriage is like, what? Because the Bible says thou shalt marry a...
What would the alternative be?
Stop telling people what they can and can't.
He says with a wedding ring on his finger.
Yeah, I'm happily married. But I also think it's kind of fucking weird that we like guilt people into Bridezilla and having $50,000 weddings and shit.
Yeah, forget about that. That's a whole different issue. That's another conversation altogether.
Having people that live together going, well, if we just got married, we'd pay less in taxes. Well, if we had a kid, we'd get that tax break.
Well,
and then now you're fucked when you want to get divorced because you decided to get married in the first place. Why do we do that to people?
Social engineering. Social engineering is and it's Republicans and Democrats do it, left and right do it. The social engineering
is a religious.
I think marriage is a social engineering experiment that, like, if you want to have strong family, the Christian right would say, if you want a strong family unit, it's a mother and a father, and they have babies, and they stay married, and they raise these children together, and that's what creates a strong family unit. Okay. And then there's the other side of that coin. So it's like, no, you don't need any of that stuff. Anybody can have a baby, anybody can have a child and raise them, and we don't need any of that stuff. So. Again, it's what you believe in. It's
I'm not saying
it's
that
not. I don't think that's a religious thing. I think
create a more strong family unit.
Maybe people put the sticker of religion on it, but I think that in reality, it's like, what do you believe? What do you think is the best path forward?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, I know.
And this is longer than we anticipated.
And people are tired of hearing us bitch at each other about it.
But
all right.
Well,
we expected this to be a 20-minute episode, and it turned into an hour and 11 minutes.
Jesus Christ, Jared. It's all your fault.
We'll put an intro on this at some point called an episode. But weigh in. Tell us what you think about religion. Call me out for being an asshole atheist. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Call me out for being a good guy atheist.
Yeah, Ryan's the nice guy atheist.
Right? Aren't I, Kristen? You're awful quiet on this one.
All you atheists out there, back us up. Tell us where we're right. And, whatever. Or just tell us to talk about the Cardinals again.
Or if you want to come on and discuss this with us,
we would love
let us
to
know.
have you on.
We'll give you the address.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
And look what happened to episode 138 or 9
this
or
is
whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to call out each number every time.
But look what happened. It wasn't even supposed. It wasn't
nothing
a thing.
like we expected.
I told Jared, I was like, go ahead and hit record. Let's see what happens. That's why there's no intro to this one, which Jared's probably going to manufacture one. He's going to do some finagling. But anyway, go fuck yourself.
That's right. Until next time, I'm Jared.
I'm Ryan.
And get a load of this.